Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Taylor. I'm a Boston-based success manager with Salesforce.com, and today I'd like to welcome you to the evolution of an admin. So, before we get started, of course, we have to talk about the safe harbor statement. Safe harbor statement essentially means that we would like you not to put any reliance on any forward-looking statements that we may make, because we may not have the ability to deliver on all of these promises. I asked, do we really need this in this session? We're not going to be talking about products. We're not going to be talking about features, functions, formulas. We're not going to be talking about moving Excel into applications, workflow rules, any of that. We're not talking about data strategy or anything. But we do need to have it in here. So, you guys have already learned about the formulas, the features, all the crazy things that you guys are going to do to add value to your organization. So starting next week, you're going to have a list. You're going to go in and you're going to start to make some changes. You're going to create cross-object workflow rules. You're going to make a difference within your organization. So today's session, we're really going to be forward-looking about you and your careers. Talk about the evolution. So if we can turn that on its side, really we're going to talk about the career and building a career for you guys. And today on stage we have 4 fantastic speakers who have all started out and been able to deliver business value to their organizations. They've executed and delivered as administrators. They've been promoted. They've hired or placed people into organizations as administrators, and they've seen those people be promoted as well. So we have a fantastic set of experience from this team. And so while it's great that we really focus on all the features and functions and everything, we want to focus on you guys. So we hope you like this session, and we hope next year, if this session gets good grades and you guys want to see it again, hopefully next year you guys have made the progression yourself and you've evolved. And we can take some folks from the audience and you guys can sit up on stage and tell your stories about how you guys have moved from an administrator to take on more responsibility within your organization. So just a quick show of hands here. How many in the room are handling administrator responsibilities right now? Yes, we have the right on. You're in the right room. How many people are just handling this maybe a couple hours or a couple days a week, and you're juggling responsibilities? Of course. How many people are doing this full time? Great. This is for everybody. So I'd like to introduce my panelists here. With me we have Katie Cole from Thomson Reuters, Jay Killian from Granicus, Alex DeSantiago from Informa, and Kim Wallens from Hire on Demand. So this is a panel. We're going to hear their great success stories. We're going to spend about 30 to 40 minutes asking them questions, learning about their success, and getting some advice from them. And we'll make sure to leave about 15 minutes at the end so you guys can ask questions and solicit their advice. So, Katie.
Yes.
Is your microphone working?
I think it's on. Can you hear me? Oh, there we go.
You guys can bear with us. We had 5 people on stage and 4 microphones. This is going to be a little bit fun.
Technical difficulties.
So tell me a little bit about Granicus. What edition are you using? How many users do you have?
Certainly.
What's your role right now?
We are currently using Enterprise Edition, although we're hoping to potentially upgrade to Unlimited soon, being able to leverage our relationship. I work in Thomson Reuters. There's actually multiple divisions, and so I actually work within the Healthcare and Science Division. My responsibility is to manage our healthcare Salesforce.com instance. I've actually been managing this instance for 8 years. So I started back in 2001. We currently have 613 active users. And right now I'm managing a team that includes myself, 1 full-time admin, and 3 part-time admins.
Great. When did you start as an administrator?
It was September of 2001. So okay. It's been over 8 years now.
How many times have you been promoted?
Twice,
okay.
Actually.
How many people are you managing now?
Well, I have, like I said, 1 full-time and 3 part-time, 3 part-time. So there's a total of 4 that are working with me.
Nice. Jay.
Yes?
What's going on at Granicus?
A lot's going on at Granicus. But as far as Salesforce is concerned, I'm one of several people that share admin duties. I work specifically on the customer side. We have about 80 employees, about 570 clients, mostly government agencies. And I handle their support needs and the deployment process and general administrative duties across the company.
Great. And when did you start with Salesforce?
I started with Salesforce right when I started at the company as a software trainer in 2005. And I started using Salesforce right away. I kind of got hooked on it, and I used it in my own business, in my own little portion of the company. And then as we got bigger and bigger, we needed someone to kind of build out bigger systems and watch it full time.
So you've gone from something that was part-time to something that's now full-time. And
absolutely. It was
perfect.
Incremental. Yeah.
Perfect. Alex, you've been an Informer right now, but tell us a little bit more about your life cycle with Salesforce.
Sure. Yeah, I started using Salesforce back in 2003. So this is probably either my fourth or fifth Dreamforce that I've been able to come. I remember back then when we were in that small theater with like 500 people, and now we have 19,000. It's just crazy. But yeah, I used it. It wasn't my full-time job, as some of you guys are also experiencing. One day, my job was in sales operations, and one day comes the VP of sales and says, "Hey, Alex, we have Salesforce.com. Nobody really knows how to use it, and we don't have an admin. We have lots of admins, but it's kind of like a mess. Can you take a look at it and see if you can help?" And then, I mean, pretty soon, I was the only administrator of the system, and it started being my full-time job. That was with about 200-300 users back then. And then I moved into a different role with a different company, like Informer right now, and it jumped from 200-300 users to 1,600 users, and managing one person at my previous company to managing a team of 10 plus any of the indirect people that are involved, like 30 other people.
Excellent. And Kim, you're an administrator, right?
Well, actually, I am. But I came from working at Salesforce.com. I was an account executive there. And about 2.5 years ago, while I was still at Salesforce, noticed a demand in the Salesforce community from our customers that were looking to hire experienced administrators to make sure they were successful with the application. And so at that time, decided to go off and launch Hire on Demand. And so what we do is we specialize in staffing the Salesforce community with experienced Salesforce administrators, developers, and other professionals with a Salesforce skill set. And so in our world today, we're interviewing Salesforce administrators across the country every day, all day long. So have, I guess, an interesting perspective on the various flavors of Salesforce administrator roles that exist and the evolution of those roles and how an admin can progress up the ranks and across, kind of branch out into different directions using that skill set.
Nice. So you've placed many people into roles that involve Salesforce.com.
Correct.
What kind of roles are there?
There are multiple roles. To my surprise, when I first started with Hire on Demand, I thought there was a Salesforce administrator. But in reality, there are many flavors of that role. When it comes to administration, you have anything starting out from as many of you in the room have, it seems like the experience, Salesforce administration could be a part of your job. And then over time, as perhaps the deployment expands or the complexity expands, this can become more of a full-time position. So within that, we have administrators that may be more basic or getting into the role where they may be a little more reactive in nature. Someone's delegating work for them to be done, and they'll go and do the customizations in the application. And as that evolves up, and the next level up is more like a business analyst. And this is where we receive our core requests from the Salesforce community when they're looking to hire, is looking for someone that interfaces with the key stakeholders across the organization so they really understand the business processes, the requirements. They can identify the best ways to map that into Salesforce and then roll up their sleeves and actually do those customizations. From there, we see a progression. Some people choose to get into project management. We have some people that want to take administration to the next level technically and could become developers. And then going back on the business side, we have sales operations is another area that we see a lot of admins evolve into and eventually can grow into with a large enough environment. It could be a CRM program manager. Even we see managers of business applications, of which Salesforce is a core piece. So there's a significant ramp up in the terms of how the position can evolve and the various branches that are tied to it.
Excellent. So there's a lot of roles and responsibilities out there that touch Salesforce.com. We polled the audience a little bit. Most of us have just a couple days a week, maybe a couple hours to do with Salesforce. And we just learned a tremendous amount at Dreamforce, and we've got a whole laundry list of things that we want to accomplish. How are we going to do that within a couple hours? Katie, have you faced the situation in your organization? Have you had the opportunity to build a business justification to say, you know what, this isn't something that's 2 hours a week?
Yes, actually, Patrick, I did. When I first started back in 2001, it was actually as a part-time position. I had gotten my degree in biochemistry, and then I was working as a sales analyst. There's not a lot of connection there. But it was actually going to be a temporary solution to have Salesforce. And so when we first started, our approach was, we just wanted to do the basics. And so one of the things I kind of found over time was we started getting to a point where the business needed more and quickly than what I could deliver to them. And so we kind of did this part-time thing for a couple years, and it was going okay. And then more and more groups were coming in. We were really starting to tackle strategic direction and, starting to network with the stakeholders. And it was starting to become more of a CRM solution for us. And it really wasn't hard to justify the switch between my being a part-time administrator and then upping that to a full-time. We had more struggles further down the road with trying to build out a team. But the change from part-time to full-time, having at least one dedicated administrator, was a slam dunk for us just because the business was excited, they wanted it, and they wanted to get after it.
Excellent. And Jay, Director of Operational Efficiency, what does that mean, and how did you create that role?
Well, I created the title out of thin air. They asked me what I wanted to be called. So the idea behind this is solving business problems. It's finding... in our company, we're a startup, and like many startups, we did a lot of things just like, because we've got to get them done, and it's the first time we've ever done them, so we do a spreadsheet, or we do a manual process, or we've got this system over here doing it, and this system over here doing something else. And so we wanted someone to kind of bring those together into our core application, which is Salesforce. It's our entire business platform except for Outlook. And kind of manage that, but also to find specific business problems that were out there and attack them. We didn't have a customer satisfaction system, so we built it from scratch in Salesforce using a survey tool. Those types of things. Somebody to kind of see that we needed this, to take the reins and build it. And we were all kind of doing it. A couple of the directors there all kind of know how to build fields and maybe set up a report or a dashboard, but nobody wanted to do it full time, and there was a real need for that. And so it was something that I really, really enjoyed and was passionate about, but I was also trying to run a team of 35 people, and it wasn't, the two weren't meshing together, so I went in this direction because I had so much passion for it.
Nice. And Alex, in your role, you've had to hire quite a few people into this role. Have you had any challenges with building the justification and saying, hey, you know what? It's time we need a developer. I need to promote someone into this role. Have you had an opportunity to do that within your organization?
Yeah. It has been a challenge, and the challenge is a good one because it's definitely, we start with a small team of maybe 5 for such a large organization, 10,000 employees. And we had so much success in the period of 2-3 years with those small team that definitely to try to justify more headcount. It was like, for instance, if for last time I wanted to hire a QA person, my boss, the CIO, he's like, why do you need an extra person if you've been so successful? And so I had to be creative and try to, this is the new process that we're going to be following and so forth. However, when I just started using Salesforce myself, I was just using a little time of my schedule on it, and then start more and more and more when more requests start coming in for new applications to use the Force.com platform, all that. My full-time job was Salesforce.com, and it was to a point that I couldn't do my actual job because of kind of a similar situation as Jay. So I had to say, hey, I need somebody to help and do the administration while I can oversee this and then do my actual job. So that's been easy to justify because of the productivity, but hard to justify because of the productivity as well.
Right.
Patrick, can I add to that?
Absolutely.
One of the, as I was have gone through the last 8 years, like I said, going from part-time to full-time was really very simple for us. But once I experienced similar things, and that even though it was my full-time job, it had grown and grown so much that it was impossible, even as a full-time administrator, to do everything that the business wanted. And that's where we really started getting to the, trying to convince the company that, okay, I need to have a team. But I experienced what I think probably a lot of you in the room do experience is that if you're successful and you do deliver, then there's not a pain point on the other side. So it's like I'm the one feeling the pain because I can't go in that many different directions. But based on being able to be successful, they're like, well, Katie, it's going great. You don't need anybody else. Everything's fine. But I have this, sense to want to either deliver, more efficiently or maybe take it to the next level. So one of the things we struggle with is being able to take these things we learn at Dreamforce and have the time to go back and actually implement, because the success can actually work against you a little bit. So that's very challenging.
Well, one thing that, for instance, the justification to come to Dreamforce, it hasn't been hard at all. Because people see the value of it, and right now we have 9 people out of my company that come here to learn about the platform. People that, and even a couple of people that don't know anything about Salesforce were brought in. They're .NET developers, so that they can learn the platform and be the Force.com developers.
Nice. So we got folks in the audience who want to sit in the big chair. But you know what? They're only one person, and their company is growing, and their task list is growing. Let's say that I come to you, Kim, and I say, I think I need another administrator. How do you start to size this for if someone says, can you find someone? I need to hire someone. I think I need one person. Do I need one or do I need 5?
Usually we hear the request from someone that's currently in the role that they recognize, like it sounds like my fellow panelists have experienced. They know the need is there, but it can be challenging to sometimes justify that to upper management. And I think the reason why is that upper management has an idea of what you do, pieces of it, but perhaps not the entire big picture. And so one thing that we've seen has been a successful approach in trying to help justify this is to really start to take note of everything that comprises your role. And so, for example, one thing that perhaps upper management may not be aware of, if it's a sizable deployment and you're overseeing the organization with Salesforce from a 30,000-foot view, you have a really thorough understanding how a change or a customization made to one area of the application may affect a whole other group of business users. And so sometimes providing that insight and sharing that with upper management to explain that from a strategic visionary sense, you are really in control and understand how these changes are going to impact across the organization. Secondly, sometimes upper management doesn't realize the other pieces that you may be doing. For example, you're typically the person that's the go-to for the user community for any questions. You're driving adoption with Salesforce. You're staying up to date on the newest releases, training new users, making sure the application is being used on a consistent basis. So these and a number of other areas are really part of the position, and sometimes upper management just isn't aware. So sometimes it's just a matter of documenting all of this and kind of outlining all the different areas that really do comprise the role. And at that time, those times we've seen a good amount of success in acknowledging that the need for additional help is required.
Excellent. And so the 3 here have all started as, some administrative capabilities, and they're all now managing teams. So along this line of, creating the proper communication so people understand the value that you're having, what recommendations do you guys have for the folks in the audience, specific to proving your value, perhaps proving the ROI of all the effort that you put in?
Well, Patrick, I think it's interesting because, again, with being in this space for 8 years, it's kind of changed depending on, the makeup of my organization. But I think that the perception is key. I think that's one of the things I learned really early on is that, I know what I'm doing. I know, what I'm accomplishing. But if I can't convey that message out to my users and upper management, it actually is as if it's not happening. Some of the different things we've done over the years in that vein is sometimes we'll actually I did one last month. We called it a brown bag session, but we invited all of our users in to kind of do a State of the Union. So to kind of show and review where we had been throughout the year. And it was high level because obviously I had, potentially 600 people calling in. But we did take the time to go into, a few specifics so they could understand that strategic direction. That's really something I've focused on a lot. Not in the very beginning, but about a couple years in, it really became apparent to me that if I was going to have success, I was going to have to drive the strategic direction for CRM within my organization. Being able to look at it from 30,000 feet above, but also down in the trenches, be able to track the details and know how to make all those pieces fit. So brown bag sessions, we've actually done sessions in the past, we call them Stump the Trainer. So just the idea of bringing the community together, and then they take that information and, they'll pass it back to each other. We'll post things, messages and alerts. I'll send out, emails. I try to be sensitive, though, to how much I send because people are so overloaded these days, especially in their work emails. It's just come in a lot of different formats. So sometimes we will provide our successes from a project perspective. We don't get so much into the little details, but so we do try to educate management, kind of keep them apprised. We actually do weekly meetings with our stakeholders. And so at least up to this point, that's been really helpful because we're able to make sure that they understand the value we're providing for them. And we find that if they have that information, it moves around the organization. So if you tell the right people, then the people who need to know do know.
Okay. And I'd say I'd have 3 points to add to that as far as proving your value. The first one is to try to measure before you make changes to see how long it really takes to do this process manually or with the standard Salesforce thing before moving to Visualforce or an Apex or some way of cutting out steps. So try to measure that so that you see it used to take 7 minutes and now it takes 2.5, and then multiply it by the times, and then you can give them a number or an ROI. But that can only work if you measure beforehand instead of after. The second one is to track all the work you do. So a very simple thing to do is to create a project record in Salesforce, and just like every time you're about to do something that takes more than an hour, you create a record, you track how many hours you have, and then you can show what you've delivered and in what direction you have gone. We did this at the company, and then we took that little model of having a project, and it always applies to a goal. We have 4 company goals, and each project you have needs to associate to a goal. And then we spread this out over every business group in our company, and we recently had our 2,000th project created in the past 2 years. So some of these are 4-hour projects to create a new piece of collateral or something like that, but they're still tracked, and then we can see how many hours and how many projects each person has. We built a prioritization system. And you've used that yourself as your own tool. You can give them a dashboard to say, I'm working on these 3 projects. They're this far percent. These are the priorities. These are how many hours have gone into it. And then that at least can be the investment part of how much time you're putting into it. And then so you basically build your own analytical system for yourself. And then my third point about how to display value is to make your applications really sexy. There's some tools now with Visualforce and Apex where you can really trick out your systems, put a little bit of extra effort into it. Don't make it, if you can avoid it, don't make it the simple Salesforce interface with 35 fields on it and that type of thing. Get your approval processes in there. Get a splash page. Get a different color scheme. Just put a little bit of effort into it, and the UI is going to make people say, this is cool, I'm going to adopt it easily. You build your documentation right into the object itself, and then people will remember that, and they'll treat it as it's not really Salesforce, it's just something cool that came along that I want to use. and then you'll be that person that delivered that. They'll expect that at the next time, and that kind of value, the tools that Salesforce added recently with Visualforce and Sites and Apex really makes that a capability.
So I think for our team, because it's really a professional services team within the same company, it's been easy to show productivity or efficiency or effectiveness is because we have a project plan that we follow, and the questions are you on time? Are you delivering on time? Are you delivering on budget? And those two questions are always yes. And every single time we're under budget. We definitely spend a lot less than what we had originally projected, and we spend a lot less than our counterparts within the same company, like SAP or Coda even, that definitely they are different systems. They're more on-premise systems, but they take very long in implement. So those are the two keys for my team. Yes.
So let me come back to something. Everybody had to get justification to come to Dreamforce. How many people need to go back this weekend, Monday, Tuesday, and write up a summary report of what they learned and submit it to their boss? All right. Everybody should do that. And I want to talk about something that Jay talked about. He talked about project management in his application, in putting everything that they do. If it's going to take an hour, let's put it in the system. There are free apps on the App Exchange. You can pull down project management tracking. Or you know what? You guys all have learned a lot this week, admin to app builder, whatever the case is. Go in and build a custom object in your application. It's going to take you, hopefully a few minutes to an hour or so. Build a dashboard off it and begin to track your list of the things that you learned, the things that you want to accomplish going forward, an estimate for what time it will take, and the value that you think it's going to prove to your business. And then share that with your boss in a report format or a dashboard format, and begin to track those things over time. Because I think that's really going to justify your value that you lend to the organization, because sometimes that piece is hidden.
If I could just jump in there, and if building a custom application or downloading it seems like a lot of work, if you're using Service, you can create a case record type and just track them through cases and use some of the workflow that's already been built and the reports that have already been built there. That's another way to manage small tasks. We add the cases to our projects so that if there's a 2-week project that we're working on, we may break it into 10 or 11 cases, assign them to different people. We kind of use that as another layer on the project management as well. So if you have Service, you can leverage that without having to take that additional step if it seems like that would be too much.
And in fact, our company, there had been this debate of how do we track time spent on tasks and this and that, do we manage at that level? And the debate went for weeks and weeks and weeks until I got tired. It's like, okay, I'm going to just build my own app. And I did it in one afternoon. I created all my dashboards based on that app, and then I just show it to the CAOs. There's like 4 CAOs last week, and they were like, whoa, you did that when? And they were pretty blown away. And now I can track what my team is doing. Do they have extra time to engage in new projects, or do I need to focus on something else? And it's just the power of that platform. It's so quick to market that people don't even appreciate that we, as Salesforce users, is so natural for us. But others, it's just they're blown away.
So I started out this whole presentation saying we're not going to talk about features and functions and products. We are, but of course you expected that. So, Alex, you're going to hire a new administrator as part of your team. What traits are you looking for? What must this resource have?
And actually I am, so just anybody interested. It's a QA manager. Typically what I do, in the past, there wasn't any certification at all. That didn't exist. So it was kind of hard. You would just look at the resume, look at the experience, how long they have been in that role. And then the traits that I usually look are, okay, how much time they have been with the business, and what's the role in developing certain traits. So now that we have the certification, it's a lot easier to weed out. I know it doesn't guarantee that somebody's going to be really ready for a position, but it definitely helps you interview those people that have gone through that process. And a few weeks ago we were discussing this, And I was thinking, I'm not certified. And I'm like, maybe I should go and certify myself just because to see how it is. So I went ahead and I certified myself. I took a week and said, okay, I think we talked on a Friday, and then the following Friday I took my exam. I passed, good. But then it definitely showed me the value of the certification. And I'm not getting paid for this plugin or anything like that, but definitely now I understand that if I'm looking for somebody qualified, at least I have a way to quantify it, and then the interview process is the other piece. Personality is number one for me. If I can't get along with somebody, forget it. I don't care how smart that person is going to be. That's the number one thing I need to have, because there are going to be pressure times where I ask something hard in a very short time period. If that person doesn't like me or I don't like that person, it's going to be chaos.
To jump on that one, I would look for, and I've hired someone who unfortunately then moved on to another company and left this gaping hole on the team. But the thing I look for is in their history, were they ever the go-to guy, right, or the go-to girl? Like at their company, were they the person that was relied on to solve problems or to fix stuff that breaks? And if that's the case, then they understand the thought process behind being an admin. And then second is like someone who's always curious. I want somebody that's like, when chatter rolls out, that they're they want to be the person that presses that button and turns it on, or the new UI, that is looking at new features, reading, and kind of studying software and being a part of the community, that type of thing, and really understanding what it is that a new tool or a new gadget can do. Like a counterpart at work that I work with, we're always trading ideas about wouldn't this be the greatest thing if we could just do that? And that kind of energy feeds off itself, so it gets everybody excited about being what we are, which is admins.
If I can add to that, a part of it, when you first ask the question, what I think of is it depends on what type of administrator. So Kim was saying there's different types and there's different roles, and so for me it really depends on what specific niche I'm trying to fill within the team, whether I need to more lean towards the developer side. Do I need more someone who's just going to focus on maintenance? Is it going to be configuration? What's that mix going to be? And each time it's a little different. But I think the two top pieces for me are, and it kind of goes with what Jay was saying about the curiosity, but passion. I think passion for Salesforce.com is an absolute must. It's you have to have it, the excitement, so that you want to come to work every day and make things better for your company and for the people that you support. And then secondly, the ability to multitask. So you talk about project management, and obviously if you have someone coming as an admin, it's not their responsibility to to manage that queue, but you want them to be able to have multiple projects going on and not have that overwhelm them. So those are my two top qualities, regardless of position.
Yeah, and I can add to that from what we see a lot too when we're aligning the right admin with a job opening is to make sure we're looking at somewhat similar sizes of deployments, because if I have a customer that has 1,000 users on UE, then perhaps an admin that's been working with 5 users on Professional Edition may not have the experience yet that this position would require. So aligning size is important, certainly personality. Another piece is also just career aspirations and what direction does this person want to end up in the next few years, to make sure that we're all aligning there for long-term success.
Great. So got a lot of good information here. And let's say that I'm the resource and I'm very motivated, I'm great to work with, I've got my whole list of things I'm going to track, I've built out sort of the value model of what's going to happen, but you know what, my organization's stuck in maintenance mode. I need to break through, I need to become visionary, I need to somehow influence my organization. Have you guys ever been stuck in maintenance mode, and what have you done to push your organization to become more visionary, so that they do need to hire more people, so that you do get promoted and start to have those people report to you? Is that a loaded question?
That was a really loaded question.
All right.
I was just thinking there's probably a few different ways to tackle that. I think, it's an excellent question, but it's never one that's solved overnight. So I think from my perspective, I've definitely hit a few of those points over the years where I feel like I've really just gotten stuck in maintenance mode, and And that's part of it. Part of, database administration is maintenance, but you don't want to get stuck in that rut and not be able to innovate and take things to the next level. I've found, I don't know this is necessarily a best practice or that anyone would really want to do this, but there's been times in my career where I just have to, take some time at night and get onto the releases, tip sheets, and basically just pull a few things, because I'm aware of the business problems that are out there. That's part of, my role as, the analyst piece, which is being able to understand what the business needs are and be able to translate that, but not always is the business ready to actually take those steps. Even if I say I'm ready, if I can somehow, figure out how to prioritize it in my queue, they don't always don't have it all thought out. And so if they're actually ready to do it, or maybe they're not ready to actually take it and maintain it. But I will, at times, try to, do some work, whether it's in Sandbox or in my developer account, and just learn new things so that I kind of put those extra tips and tricks in my back pocket. And then I'm a little bit better positioned if and when some of those subjects do come up. It's not like I have to go and start from scratch on how I might be able to approach it, because I've already had a little bit of exposure just by taking that initiative myself.
Whether you like it or not, everyone is a salesman. And you have to, in my own case, I have to be selling Salesforce. No matter how effective, how productive it is, it's a constant thing. And for instance, right now we're at a point that all the 50 businesses that we wanted to implement are using Salesforce. And now we have what's next. Do we go into maintenance mode, or do we go into the innovation and do more strategic changes? And it's interesting because I was chatting with one of my developers a couple of days ago, and he's like, hey, we can start doing some proof of concepts and just doing without having to go through this whole approval process and for the project, et cetera, and then just show people. And as soon as people see, then they'll just buy into it. And that's what we've been able to do in the past year, for instance. There are smaller projects that are really easy to complete, but then you just take it, the concept, you work it, you show the proof of concept, and then sell and say, this is what we can do, and this is how much money you can save. Then it definitely changes the maintenance mode, and it goes into more of a strategic changes and growth.
And that kind of takes you from being a maintenance admin, it takes you from being like kind of the good admin who just does what they're told, into being more like a business hero, somebody that's like, we fixed this stuff we've been talking about, like Alex was saying. If they're talking about it endlessly, and you can put it together in an afternoon, at least a proof of concept, like just do it. Just do it, and then show it off, and let them say why they aren't going to use what you just did. It really increases your personal value that at least you gave it a shot, even if they don't end up using it, or they take it in a new direction, but you've got the framework there. It also shows them that you understand the business side and are not just basically a project and case and admin person. And also, don't let yourself get into maintenance mode. I've built so many workflow emails out there. I spend a lot of time every time the business process changes. You have to go through 400 email templates and do this and that. I was doing it the other day, and I was like, people are ignoring these emails anyway in a lot of cases. And so, but if I spent an afternoon building this sites page that allows something that we do internally and then copy an email to our customers to just give the customers a place to go and see that specific thing, and that saves 10 minutes 300 times a year, like doing that shows real value. The other one is just being told what to do. I think in my case, and I know several of the admins at my company, we kind of choose the projects we want to work on, the ones we get passionate about. People can tell we're passionate about. They know we're solving a business problem. May not be the one that they really wanted to be fixed right away, but they know it's got to be done. And they know that if you're that passionate about it, it's going to get done, and it's going to get done right. So over time, if you really take on these new features and you understand the system and you understand the business processes, you can write your own roadmap in a lot of cases, or at the very least plug in little pet projects into the roadmap because you're going to work on them late at night, or you're going to be able to churn them out really fast.
Well, I think, and to add to that, if I could, I think always looking for opportunities. So one of the things that we've run into is, I mean, everyone in the room's probably has happened to them at least once where you kind of hit a wall with functionality. So what you really want to do and what the reality is, and it's not as much of an issue anymore with where we're at these days, but it used to happen to me more frequently back in, let's say 2003. And so one of the things I would do is I would kind of keep a mental list of those walls that we had hit, and as Salesforce continued to develop and those weren't roadblocks for us anymore, I would actually take the initiative to go back and make those fixes or make the improvements or actually just do the project that not necessarily anyone, wasn't coming to me and going, when's it going to happen? But then I would just kind of give it to them and say, hey, Salesforce just made this improvement with their last release. Remember we were talking about this. This is going to help your business in these ways. And it's implemented and it's ready to go now. And so those little successes, you can plant those seeds and showing that you're taking initiative. And like Jay said, you're not just, being the good little admin and, only doing what you're told to do. I think that's really one of the ways that we provide value to our users.
Yeah, and I'll second that. I think that's just so critical when it comes to justifying, because back to what we were talking about earlier, sometimes if upper management doesn't have a visual, doesn't fully grasp everything that you're working on, if you're able and have the time to be a little proactive and actually go and do some of these things so they have a visual and you can demonstrate the value. And you could do this if it's something that's not feasible to do in your production environment. If you had Sandbox, you could work it in Sandbox. If you don't have Sandbox, you could even just take advantage of the developers edition and build it in there, and again be able to demonstrate that, and hopefully they'll see the value in what you're looking to propose to do.
And one other thing that we've started doing, actually my counterpart Hank is over there, is kind of doing this, is don't just work on a project that someone else labels for you, like we need a project management system. Like go ahead and brand it. Like create something like we've got the proposal generation system coming up, and we're doing PG3, right? We called it something like PG3 that people know what it is, but it's kind of got like a versioning system to it, and so that they know that if there's a PG3, when I come around to do PG 3.1 or 3.2, they know that I'm working on these 7 objects that all lead into that, instead of saying I'm working on this little process, and this little process maybe doesn't have a name for it. So that's a little tip. If you can lump them together into something branded, then you can get your stakeholders behind it, because they'll just talk about PG3 instead of proposal generation system revise, like that type of thing.
This is an interesting conversation because breaking through the maintenance mode is always very difficult, but it's nice. As a Salesforce employee, I'm glad that we help you guys because we're not in maintenance mode. We give you guys 3 releases a year. You don't need to say Salesforce did this for us. I built it. You don't need to give us the credit. Take the credit. Go ahead and deliver business value to your organization. I want to come back to something. So we talked about being curious. We talked about getting certified. We talked about building a proof of concept, listening out for ideas, solving those ideas, showing those ideas, and getting people to think correctly. We'll come back to something we talked about, which is by doing that, I've made myself very indispensable to the organization. And so it's sort of a dangerous zone. Could we go back to this question a little bit and, hey, I want to get promoted. Look at all the stuff that I've done. I can't promote you. What would happen? Talk a little bit more about how you actually break through and evolve your career and face some of those blocks.
Probably about 4 years ago, I was at that crossroad, and I reached to kind of like a plateau where I couldn't go higher because nobody else was doing Salesforce except me. And I was basically questioning whether Salesforce was the way to go. And I went to talk to a friend of mine, and he was the VP of sales. He was a pretty good friend. And I said, hey, close the door and say, hey, I got this problem. And this is going to be more of a personal basis. Don't be a boss this time. Just be yourself. I say, hey, I'm at a crossroad. I need to make a decision. I want to grow. I want to grow in a career. I want to make more money, of course, and all that stuff. But I don't know if I can do it with Salesforce, and maybe I need to switch careers. And he looked at me and he kind of chuckled and said, you know what? You're so good at what you do in Salesforce. Salesforce is such a good tool that you should go and grow with it and learn more and just keep going with it. Don't even think about going somewhere else or do something else, because there's a lot of potential in Salesforce. And he said, and you might want to leave this company and go in a bigger company. because there's not much to offer you. And he was pretty honest about it. And I put my feelers, a lot of networking. Dreamforce was really helpful in meeting people and all that. And a good friend of mine, he's the VP of Professional Services, Dean Robinson. He calls me one day, hey, Alex, I got a lead for you. And then he pretty much got me with Informa. It was 10 times bigger than the company that I was working for, with huge potential. And now looking back, definitely I'm appreciative to that advice that I got from my friend, and I was able to make the choice of keep going. But I'd say if your company gets to a point, maybe there's growth potential sideways or not, but if not, then maybe there's an opportunity to move to a bigger company, so as to start your own company.
I think specifically with the problem you were saying is, like, I've built this application, I know it, I'm the designer of it, I implemented it, I rolled it out, I trained everybody. Now I'm kind of stuck with it, right? Well, now obviously that's tremendous job security, and in this market that's a good thing to have. You're indispensable, you are mission critical. But when you are trying to grow, one of the things I try to do is on a project by project basis, we're starting to do this more and more, is the handoff of the project to the business leaders that asked for it, or the person that's going to own that going forward. Built a system recently that has a lot of Apex in it, but on the front end, the case generation system, it automatically creates all these cases for this project based on certain criteria. They control the text of those cases. They know how to go in there and make those adjustments. So the code is very small, but the actual components are something I can hand off and decentralize. And then beyond that, of course, the one part that nobody really likes to do but is really critical to it is documentation. Building systems that are simple, that are fully documented, that have an admin guide, put some time into it so that if somebody else needs to own it, you hand them the admin guide, you give them a half hour of training, and go away. So that type of thing can help you take some of the burden that you build on yourself with all these systems, can take some of that weight off if you can create the way to hand it off as part of the system that you're building. Because otherwise, if there's no documentation, they're always going to come to you. You've kind of built your own quicksand.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to echo Jay's sentiments, I think that the documentation, we've actually spent a lot of time this last year trying to do that, even just from trying to build a team. And so not having all of the knowledge and cross-functional, training has also been something we've pursued as well over the last couple of years. But, within the team, but then also, being able to hand certain things off to the business. And it's a fine line because, you want to make sure you don't have too many hands in the pot, but you also don't want to have, all of it be on the admin. And then also, which frees up time to do the strategic work, but also to give the business a sense of ownership, I think, because if it just always happens, you wave the Salesforce magic stick, so to speak, I don't think there's necessarily, I don't think they recognize, the value to the same degree. So I think if they have ownership and you can kind of share that and help, drive it and inform it, but kind of work in a collaborative way with your stakeholders, I think that can help alleviate a little bit of what you're talking about, Patrick.
So everybody hates documentation, but you're saying it's worthwhile.
It's a necessary evil.
All right.
Yes.
Good. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Katie, Jay, Alex, Kim. We have an opportunity to ask these guys questions. So if there's anybody who would like some advice from these panelists, please come up and ask a question. We have 2 microphones. We have 1 on each side. Yes.
Hi. I actually have a comment. My name is Omar Mamoon, and I work in Premier Support at Salesforce. And Katie Cole is actually, she's on my account. Or I work for Katie, basically.
You're going to be nice, right?
No, I'm going to be very nice, Katie. Don't worry.
Okay, good.
And I was just listening to you guys talk about the evolution of an admin, and I thought it was really interesting how when you start off, it's kind of difficult to prove your value, and it's hard to scale, and it seems like there's a lot of stuff that you have to do, and then to just get more people and prove your value, and to get like, for example, Eric, who also works with Katie. So one thing that Premier Support does is they have administration services, which basically, if, for example, what we do is if you have like 100 reports, 100 dashboards, which you need to edit, and that would take you hours and hours and hours, you could offload that to Premier Support, and we do it in minutes. So it's just something that if it makes sense, if the ROI on that makes sense to you and your business, it's just something to have in the back of your minds.
Yeah, Premier Support is a great tool. Nobody needs to know you're using them. You send them a case that comes back, and all of a sudden your dashboards are all exactly the way your boss wanted it, and like, you know, that's great. If only they wrote documentation, it would be the greatest thing.
Did you hear that, Omar?
Thank you. That's a good point. It's a very underutilized service. Yes.
Hi, thank you. As I start to look towards the evolution of my own career, I was thinking that I may want to make the leap from the nonprofit sector to the for-profit sector while also working at a company that uses Salesforce and potentially being an administrator there. But I just was wondering how you would all, I guess, look upon a nonprofit person coming into the for-profit sector, and if it seems like a huge cognitive leap or something that I'm just looking for, I don't know, maybe just a little bit of advice. Sure. Coming from the nonprofit sector.
I'll take first stab at that. Personally, it's interesting you mentioned that because every time I come, this is my fourth Dreamforce, and every time we come and I hear the stories that go on with, you know, how Salesforce supports nonprofit organizations, I get really excited. And I think, you know, the short answer is that if you're coming from a nonprofit, my guess is that you're very passionate about what you do, and so that resonates very well for me. And so because that's one of my two top qualities, you know, if you've got the Salesforce experience, you know, you're passionate about Salesforce, but if you're coming from that space, it's a very good attribute from my perspective.
And from a functional, I'm sorry to cut you off, but from a functional perspective, like for-profit, non-profit, business is business. And so, like, if you know how to write a workflow rule, I need you. You know, like, that's, from the functional perspective, I don't look at that any differently from somebody that's coming from a Fortune 500. You know, the pressures are different, the projects are different, like, you know, but from a functional perspective, if you know how to do the job, that's not a drawback in any way.
Yeah, I was just going to second that. Basically, when I had to hire somebody, I looked at where they have worked before, but I don't really pay attention to the industry. Is it whether they know Salesforce or not? That's where the gist of it.
Yeah, I think the skill sets really transcend, because it's like if you can build your knowledge on how to administer the system, you can go into, I mean, one of the things Kim was talking about is it can be different depending on how many users, right? So there's a very big difference between if you support a system that only has, let's say, 10 users, and, you know, and I'm interviewing you to come and work, you know, in my organization where I've got over 600. So there's a team component. There's looking at it from, how can you demonstrate the project management skills? But I really don't think that nonprofit versus profit should make any difference.
Yeah, and I would second that. That's what I was going to comment on. It would just be one thing would just be the size of the environment. And then secondly, I think it's partly just kind of your personal interests. Coming from the nonprofit space, it just may be more from that level of the idea of working in a for-profit environment. Is that something of interest? Would you have passion working in that space? But if that's there, because as a nonprofit, you're likely on the unlimited edition, so you very well have exposure to all the components and modules within Salesforce. So I think it's mostly boils down to size and then just personal interest.
Yes.
Hi, I'm actually on the IT side and have a DBA who was given the title but really isn't passionate about it and mostly does data entry. So there's this huge kind of gap at our relatively small organization. And I struggle with my workflow of not wanting to take on projects that I believe should be done with the database and with CRM in general. Do you ever see in smaller organizations a role for someone to be playing both roles, IT and CRM or database administrator or anything like that, or do you think it's important to keep those two separate?
I see everything out there. So we see a lot of companies where, as far as the CRM is concerned, it can live in IT. Sometimes it lives on the business side. It's to be sales, sales operations, marketing. So you really see a variety of owners. It's really native to the organization. I wouldn't even say there's a specific trend on how that's managed. And sometimes it is a joint effort where it is both IT and some piece of the business that are managing the application together.
I think that, when you see the most success is when the business is driving it, though. I work in IT right now. I used to work in the business side. And when the VP of sales or the CEO catches the vision, then it's a lot easier than when you are in IT and trying to convince from the CIO standpoint of view, because usually the business looks at IT like a bunch of geeks. And it's kind of hard to break that, but that would be my...
But I do think that if you have the collaboration, like Kim was saying, I'm not sure it matters where it lives. In my 8 years, I've been in 3 different areas. My resting spot right now is in my MS group, and it is the best fit compared to the ones I had before. And I do see the value in what Alex is saying about the business driving it, but I think that if you have the collaboration, it doesn't matter where you're sitting as long as you are having that communication and that two-way interaction with your stakeholders. The important part is to bring everyone to the table.
Yeah, basically my right-hand man, he doesn't even work on my team. He's a developer. He's a DBA, actually, for our company, much similar situation. But he kind of was in maintenance mode there, and it wasn't really challenging to him. And so I brought a really sexy project to him because it revolved a lot of Apex. He learned Apex. He learned Visualforce. Over the course of several months, he picked it all up. And now he loves when I come to him with a project because it's exciting work for him. And it has, on the DBA side, sometimes the stuff you do doesn't have sex appeal. It doesn't have in-your-face stuff. And so he actually helped me build this sites page and this whole process that is going to revolutionize one segment of our business. And, I make sure that I give him all sorts of props for that, even though it's not a core part of his job. But I leveraged his ability and his passion for it. And now, he's a huge advocate for Salesforce development. And, he would work on my team full-time if there was that role. I'm sure he would.
Yeah, and I had, for instance, just a few months ago, I had my release manager. He was working on just trying to establish the process and all that. And all of a sudden, my lead developer left. He went to another company. And I had that hole in there. And my release manager was a developer by trade. He was a .NET developer. And he came to me and said, Alex, can I have that job? I'm like, well, you're the release manager. Why do you want to be a developer? I would love to just try it. And now he's just loving it. He just won't go back to being a release manager.
We have time for one more question. Who's going to ask the hardest question of the day? Good. All right. We've got a call to action for you guys. So we've heard these great stories from these panelists. We need to take what we've learned this week. We need to be prepared, know the product. We need to create solutions, and we need to network, which means we're going to go ahead and ask others for business cards. We're going to understand what else is going on in the Salesforce community. And we really want to see your star rise. We really want to have another session like this next year, and we want to see some of you up on our stage. This is the last session in this room, so you guys are welcome to stay around. We'll stick around for a little bit and answer any other questions that you guys may have. So thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you to the panelists for participating. It was wonderful.